welcome back to Mac Movie Review, that subset of Mac Music Review. In this epic episode, we are talking about my 5 favorite A24 movies. If you don't know, A24 started off as a pretty small company with not a lot of success or notoriety, and their first movie ever was Spring Breakers, which is an interesting choice, interesting way to kick off your brand. And that movie really doesn't feel like the A24 brand today. Now they are known for just the most pretentious art movies, art and indie, and really the most prestige and best pretentious art and indie movies. Like, they have so many absolutely amazing movies under their name. They release several movies every single year. A couple are flops, a couple just fly completely under the radar, and a lot of them gain a lot of notoriety, and they have amassed quite a fan base and a name for themselves and a reputation. When you see that A24 logo pop up before a movie, you know you're getting something special. Before I hop into my personal top 5 favorite A24 films, I want to throw out a couple honorable mentions. Of course, one of the biggest A24 films, if not the absolute biggest, is last year's Best Picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie is totally ridiculous, and it is extremely emotional at its core, which is why I think it deserves to be among the greats. Not even just among the best A24 films, but actually all of these honorable mentions and everything in the top 5 are all among my favorite films of all time, including this one. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Another great A24 movie, Last Black Man in San Francisco. This one is really cool. This really would be my number 6 if I was doing a top 5. If I was doing a top 6, I would include this one because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, favorite opening scene of all time. I think that's enough said. After Sun is an extremely amazing movie that I wasn't really feeling that much the first time I watched it, but on rewatch, it hits a lot harder. It's a lot better. It doesn't have much plot. It doesn't need a lot of plot. It's more about the emotion. It's more about the subtext. It's a very cool movie. And then lastly, I want to mention Past Lives, a film that I caught earlier this year in the cinema. Very cool thing to watch in the movie theater. Great movie. It's kind of funny. It's very heartbreaking. It's kind of romantic. It's a really I can recommend anyone watch this movie. It is subtitled for a portion of it, which is going to turn a lot of people off, but it's extremely watchable. It's a really fun time, and it's just very wholesome. That's enough of that. It's time to talk about the cherry on top, the subject of this video. I'm talking the top 5 A24 films of all time from the ones that I have seen. My number 5 is 8th Grade. I think this film is quite good. It's directed by Bo Burnham. It is a coming-of-age story. I think it is my favorite. It's potentially my favorite coming-of-age story. And what that means, if you're not familiar with the term, it's just like a movie that shows a kid growing up and maturing. In this case, it's an 8th grader, Elsie Fisher, who is going into high school, I believe, or played by Elsie Fisher. She's going into high school, and the film is both extremely funny and just so timely and relevant. It's really rare that anyone can make a movie that captures a certain time period this effectively, but this really did capture the late 2010s in a way that I think is just so special, and it's going to be such a time capsule going forward. Like, it's one of those movies, like, there's like Dazed and Confused and other films which capture a certain time period, or like American Graffiti, and I think this is one of those movies, or like Breakfast Club, and I think this just really it's going to go down as a classic, or it should, because it's a really incredible film. Yeah, The Green Knight is unbelievable. This is one of the best experiences I've ever had in the movie theater. I saw this by myself, and there's a shot of this movie where I got dizzy watching this. Like, it was like the screen was flipping, and I was like, what in the world? It is a very psychedelic story. It's one dude basically the entire time. It is a journey. It is extremely psychological. It's not going to be for everybody. It's extremely slow, and it's one of the most engrossing movies I've ever seen. Like, it's one of the most immersive movies I've ever seen. Like, easily, if I had a top 5 most immersive movies, this would be very high on that list. It'd easily make the top 5. And just incredibly well made, fantastic ending also. One of the great movie endings, in my opinion, and that really is a lot of people's takeaway. Even people that don't like the movie have this takeaway of just being blown away by the ending. So I would highly recommend watching it just for that ending, even if you're not vibing with the rest of the movie, you're going to get something from that. Very, very cool movie. Big recommend. A couple weeks ago, if I was making this video, and I was planning on making this video earlier, I would not have included Come On, Come On, but I just rewatched this with some of my siblings, and I was absolutely dumbfounded by how good this movie is. I mean, it just, every single scene, the soundtrack is incredible, visually it's incredible, the acting is incredible, specifically from Joaquin Phoenix. I think he just absolutely comes through. One of my favorite actors of all, probably my top 5 favorite actors, and large part, honestly, because of this movie, because his performance is just incredible. It's amazing. And I think the movie is extremely profound, and it just hit me really, really hard the second time. I gave it an 8 out of 10 the first time I watched it, and a 10 out of 10 the second time. That's how much I love it. It's a perfect movie in my eyes. My number 2 is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, a movie that I actually was able to catch in theaters. Easily one of my favorite films from 2022, which had a lot of really amazing movies. Not my favorite film of 2022. I'll link my best of 2021 and 2022 where I talk about Marcel and The Green Knight. So I don't need to say too much about it in this, other than that it's an extremely wholesome movie, and I'm just a sucker for wholesome movies. It's extremely well made. It's extremely funny while also being extremely heartfelt. Every time I've seen this movie, it has made me cry. And that's a sign of a really great movie. It's 90 minutes long, and they don't waste a single minute. I loved literally every single minute of this movie. It's amazing that it's not number 1, but let's talk about number 1. And this is a movie that is so under the radar. It's so under the radar, it's crazy. This main actor, Jason Segel, I think that's his name, Jason Segel, and then Jesse Eisenberg. It's a movie that is based off a book, which is about an interview, a real interview. It's like a true book about kind of a bender that this guy working for Rolling Stone did, interviewing, like a several day long interview, and just hanging out with the guy who wrote Infinite Jest, which is David Foster Wallace, I think is his name. I hate Infinite Jest, and I freaking love this movie. It's unbelievable. The emotions this movie makes me feel. It's one of those movies that's like, makes a case for movies existing in the first place, in my opinion, because it's able to capture these feelings and emotions that you could not have conveyed through a book. You could not have conveyed it in a TV show. You couldn't have conveyed it in a song. It could only be conveyed through the medium of movies and film, and just the emotions that this movie makes you feel by the end. And honestly, throughout, it's extremely profound, and it's also just captivating. Every single minute of this movie, I was locked in. And I hope other people can watch this movie and have a similar experience, because it really was a pretty otherworldly experience watching this movie. It's extremely slept on, and it's fantastic. And that's all I have for this wonderful video. Just A24 movies that I like. Guys, the studio has made a bazillion movies. Like, there's so many A24 movies. Please let me know what I missed, because I know there's so many that Dude, if you guys put your top 5s in this comment section, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of movies I haven't even seen. I've seen a lot of A24 movies. There's gonna be a lot I haven't seen if you guys put your list in there. I'm very curious. Thank you for watching the video. Have a great rest of your day.